My girlfriend drained our entire savings account while I was fighting for my life in the ICU. She sent me a text saying, "This is what happens when you don't appreciate what you have." What she didn't know was that I'd been watching her for months, and I was already 3 moves ahead. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 38 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I'm a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Austin, Texas. Good salary, steady work, the kind of predictable life that lets you plan for the future. I'd been with Sarah Rodriguez for 4 years. We weren't married, but we lived together in a house I'd bought before we met. She was 32, worked part-time as a yoga instructor, and had this way of making everything feel lighter when I came home from long days debugging code. Or at least, that's what I thought. See, I'm the kind of person who notices patterns. It's literally what I do for a living, find problems in systems before they crash. And about 6 months ago, I started noticing some patterns in my personal life that didn't add up. Sarah had always been somewhat financially irresponsible. Designer clothes she couldn't afford, expensive dinners she'd put on credit cards, that sort of thing. But lately, she'd been asking more questions about my finances. How much was in our joint savings? What were my investment accounts worth? She'd frame it as wanting to plan our future together. But something felt off. Then there were the phone calls, always stepping outside to take them. New passwords on her devices, working late at the studio more often, but her paychecks weren't reflecting the extra hours. Most people might have confronted her directly, asked what was going on, demanded answers. But I'm a systems guy. When I suspect a bug, I don't just guess. I trace it. I document everything. I build a case, so I started keeping records. Screenshots of strange transactions, photos of receipts I found, audio recordings when she thought I couldn't hear her hushed conversations. I had no idea how valuable that documentation would become or how soon I'd need it. Because 3 weeks later, I collapsed at work with what doctors would later tell me was a massive heart attack at 38 years old. The heart attack hit me like a freight train during a code review meeting. One moment I was explaining a database optimization. The next I was on the floor with crushing chest pain that felt like someone was standing on my ribcage. My coworker Jake called 911 while our manager Lisa Martinez tried to keep me conscious. The paramedic said later that I'd coded twice in the ambulance. My heart literally stopped beating. At Del Seaton Medical Center, they rushed me into emergency surgery to clear a blocked artery. I spent the next 4 days in the cardiac ICU, drifting in and out of consciousness. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive. A 38-year-old having a massive heart attack isn't normal, but stress, genetics, and too many energy drinks during late-night coding sessions had finally caught up with me. During those first critical days, I couldn't even hold my phone, let alone check messages. The medical team kept me heavily sedated while my heart stabilized. Sarah visited once. I vaguely remember her sitting beside my bed, but I was too drugged to have any real conversation. What I didn't know was that while I was fighting for my life, Sarah was busy making some life-changing decisions of her own. On day 5, when I finally came to with a clear head, I reached for my phone. My hands were still shaky, but I managed to unlock it. That's when I saw the notification that changed everything. A text from our joint savings account. Account balance alert. $127 remaining. Our joint account. The one that had $47,000 in it just a week ago. Money I'd been saving for an engagement ring, actually. Ironic, considering. Below the bank alert was a message from Sarah. This is what happens when you don't appreciate what you have. I'm done being taken for granted. I stared at that message for a long time. My heart monitor started beeping faster, not from the medical trauma, but from pure rage mixed with something else. Relief, maybe. Because finally, Sarah had shown me exactly who she really was, and she had no idea that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. I didn't respond to Sarah's text immediately. Instead, I did what any good systems analyst would do. I started gathering data. From my hospital bed, I logged into every account I could access from my phone. Our joint checking account, $127. Our joint savings, $0. But here's where Sarah made her first mistake. She didn't know about my individual accounts. My personal checking account at a different bank, untouched. My investment portfolio, safe. My cryptocurrency wallet, still there. The emergency fund I kept at a credit union under my business name for freelance work. $23,000 completely intact. See, I'd learned a long time ago never to put all your money in one basket. And after I'd started noticing Sarah's suspicious behavior months earlier, I'd been quietly moving money around, creating financial firewalls she didn't even know existed. I pulled up the folder on my phone labeled Documentation, the same folder where I'd been storing screenshots and recordings of Sarah's strange behavior. Thanks to mobile banking, I had timestamps showing exactly when each withdrawal was made. Every single transaction happened while I was unconscious in the ICU. The largest withdrawal, $32,000, was made at 2:47 a.m. on the day after my heart attack, while I was literally flatlined on the operating table. The rest were smaller amounts spread across 3 days, each one timed when visiting hours were over, and she knew I couldn't possibly be awake. But here's what really got me. I scrolled through our text history and found a message from 2 days before my heart attack. Sarah had asked me about the account balance, claiming she wanted to make sure we had enough for emergencies. I'd told her we had about $47,000 saved up. She'd seemed impressed, even grateful. Now I realized she was just taking inventory. My phone buzzed with another message from Sarah. "I know you're awake. The nurses said you're stable. We need to talk." I set the phone down without responding. Sarah thought she'd played the perfect hand. Take the money while I was helpless, then play victim when I recovered. What she didn't know was that I'd been building a case against her for months, and she'd just handed me the final piece of evidence I needed. The first person I called wasn't Sarah. It was my sister, Emma. Emma lives in Houston, about 3 hours from Austin. She's a CPA with her own practice, and more importantly, she's the only person who knew about my suspicions regarding Sarah. I'd confided in her about the strange behavior I'd been documenting. "Marcus? Oh my God, I heard about the heart attack from Mom. How are you feeling?" "I've been better," I said, keeping my voice low. "Emma, I need you to come to Austin, and I need you to not tell anyone you're coming, especially if Sarah calls you." There was a pause. "She did it, didn't she?" "She took the money. Every penny from our joint accounts, while I was unconscious." Emma's response was immediate and fierce. "That absolute piece of, 'Okay, I'm leaving Houston in an hour. Don't do anything until I get there.'" Next, I called my manager, Lisa Martinez, who'd been checking on me daily since the heart attack. I told her I needed to take extended medical leave, which she immediately approved. The company's short-term disability would cover 80% of my salary for up to 6 months. Then I made the call I'd been preparing for, without even knowing it. 6 months earlier, when I'd first started noticing Sarah's suspicious behavior, I'd consulted with a lawyer friend of Emma's, Jennifer Walsh. I'd framed it as hypothetical questions about financial protection. Jennifer had given me advice that I'd followed religiously: document everything, maintain separate accounts, and never make major financial decisions based on emotion. "Marcus, I'm so sorry to hear about your health scare," Jennifer said when I called. "But I have to ask, is this about Sarah?" She cleaned out our joint accounts while I was in the ICU. "Do you have the documentation we discussed?" I smiled for the first time in days. Every screenshot, every recording, every suspicious transaction from the past 6 months, plus bank records showing exactly when she made the withdrawals. "Good, don't contact her directly. Don't respond to her messages. Forward everything to me. We're going to let her think she's won while we build an airtight case." As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected: gratitude. Sarah thought she'd destroyed me, but she'd actually freed me. Emma arrived that evening with a laptop bag and a look of pure determination. My sister doesn't mess around when someone hurts her family. "Okay, show me everything," she said, pulling up a chair next to my hospital bed. I handed her my phone with the documentation folder open. Emma's accounting background meant she could spot financial irregularities that most people would miss. As she scrolled through my screenshots and recordings, her expression grew darker. "Marcus, this goes back way further than 6 months. Look at this pattern." She showed me the phone screen. These cash withdrawals from her personal account, they're always in round numbers, always just under $500 to avoid triggering bank notifications. and they aligned perfectly with her claims about working extra classes at the yoga studio. Emma pulled out her laptop and created a spreadsheet, organizing everything chronologically. She's been systematically preparing to leave you for almost a year. The money she took from your joint accounts? That was just the final grab. That's when she showed me something I'd missed. In the metadata of one of my screenshots, there was a partial view of Sarah's text messages with someone named Derek. Derek, I said. She mentioned someone named Derek a few months ago. Said he was a new yoga student who needed extra guidance. Emma raised an eyebrow. Extra guidance, right. We spent the next 2 hours building a timeline. Sarah's late nights at the studio coincided with large cash withdrawals. Her new expensive clothes appeared right after she'd asked me for help with rent. Money that I now realized she'd pocketed while paying her actual expenses with cash. The most damning evidence came from my audio recordings. I'd started recording our conversations using a voice memo app whenever she brought up money or our future. In one recording from 3 weeks before my heart attack, Sarah could be heard on a phone call in our backyard. I know, baby, but I need to be careful. Her voice was clear through my phone's microphone. Once I get the money moved, we can finally be together properly. He has no idea what's coming. Emma looked up from the laptop. Marcus, she didn't just steal from you. She's been planning to disappear with someone else entirely. The betrayal hurt, but the evidence felt like armor. Sarah had underestimated me completely. Over the next 3 days in the hospital, Emma and I turned my recovery room into a war room. We organized every piece of evidence into categories: financial fraud, premeditated deception, and breach of fiduciary duty. Emma's accounting expertise was invaluable. She'd discovered that Sarah had opened 3 credit cards in her name over the past year, each with my home address listed as her residence. She'd been building credit using my financial stability while planning her exit strategy. Look at this, Emma said, showing me her laptop screen. She applied for these cards right after you added her to your car insurance and put her name on the utility bills. She was using your financial credibility to establish her own credit profile. Jennifer Walsh visited on my 4th day in the hospital. She reviewed our evidence with the thoroughness of a prosecutor building a case. This is textbook financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, Jennifer said. The timing of the withdrawals while you were medically incapacitated creates legal liability beyond just relationship issues. We're talking potential criminal charges. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. My tech background had taught me to never fully delete anything, including location data from our shared Google account. Sarah had forgotten that her phone was still linked to our family plan. Emma pulled up the location history. Marcus, look where she was when she made these withdrawals. The GPS data showed Sarah at our bank at 2:47 a.m., then driving directly to an address across town, an apartment complex I'd never heard of. She'd stayed there until 6 a.m. before returning home. That's Derek's place, I realized. She went straight from stealing our money to celebrating with her boyfriend. Jennifer nodded grimly. This shows premeditation and coordination. She didn't act out of emotion or desperation. This was calculated. We also discovered that Sarah had been photographing financial documents around our house. My phone's cloud backup had been syncing her photos too, and she'd been taking pictures of my investment statements, insurance policies, and even my work laptop screen when I left banking websites open. She was conducting surveillance on you in your own home, Emma said, shaking her head. For months. The evidence was overwhelming. Sarah thought she'd executed the perfect crime, but she'd actually documented every step of her betrayal. On my 5th day in the hospital, Sarah made her first major mistake. She came to visit. I pretended to be asleep when she walked into my room. Emma had hidden in the bathroom with her phone recording. We'd planned this moment carefully. Marcus, I know you're awake, Sarah said softly. We need to talk about this. I opened my eyes and looked at her. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with my money. Her hair was freshly highlighted, and she had that glow people get when they're in love, just not with the person they're supposed to be with. Sarah, I said, my voice deliberately weak. I saw the bank notifications. She sat down, putting on her concerned girlfriend act. I had to protect us, Marcus. I was scared you might not make it. and I didn't want the accounts to get frozen or tied up in legal issues. You took $47,000 to protect us. I moved it to a safer place, a high-yield savings account that won't be affected if something happens to you medically. She reached for my hand. Baby, I was terrified of losing you. From the bathroom, Emma was getting this entire performance on video. Where did you move it? I asked. Sarah's pause was just a fraction too long. A credit union in Round Rock. Better interest rates. I nodded weakly. Can you show me the statements when I get home? Of course. Don't worry about money right now. Just focus on getting better. After she left, Emma emerged from the bathroom with a satisfied smile. She just lied about 15 different things, and we got it all recorded. But Sarah's visit had a purpose beyond fake concern. That evening, she called Emma directly. Emma, I'm so worried about Marcus. He seems confused about the money situation. The medications might be affecting his memory. Emma played her part perfectly. What do you mean? He's asking strange questions about the accounts, like he doesn't remember me moving the money for safety. I'm worried the heart attack might have caused some cognitive issues. Sarah was laying groundwork to claim I was mentally incompetent, trying to discredit me before I could challenge her story. What she didn't know was that Emma was recording that conversation too. I was discharged from the hospital on a Thursday morning. Instead of going home, Emma drove me directly to Jennifer Walsh's law office in downtown Austin. Jennifer had spent the week building our case. Her conference room looked like something from a legal thriller. Documents organized in neat stacks, a timeline posted on the whiteboard, and printed screenshots arranged by category. Marcus, before we proceed, I need to ask, do you want to try to resolve this privately with Sarah, or do you want to pursue this through official channels? I thought about Sarah's performance in the hospital room, her lies about moving money to protect us, and her attempt to convince Emma that I was mentally compromised. Official channels, I said without hesitation. Jennifer nodded. Good, because I've already filed a police report for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Detective Maria Santos from Austin PD's Financial Crimes Unit wants to meet with you tomorrow. That afternoon, I finally went home. Sarah's car was in the driveway next to a black BMW I didn't recognize. Emma parked across the street. Are you ready for this? She asked. I took a deep breath. Let's go. Sarah met me at the front door, all smiles and concern. Marcus, you should have called. I would have picked you up from the hospital. Behind her, a tall guy with perfectly styled hair was sitting on my couch. Derek, presumably. This is Derek, Sarah said quickly. He's been helping me take care of the house while you were in the hospital. Such a good friend. Derek stood up and extended his hand. Hey man, so sorry about the heart attack. Sarah's been really worried about you. The audacity was breathtaking. They were sitting in my living room, probably planning their future together with my money, and Derek was offering me sympathy. That's thoughtful, I said, shaking his hand. Sarah, can we talk privately? Sarah's smile flickered. Of course. Derek was just leaving anyway. After Derek left, I sat down in my own living room and looked at the woman I'd lived with for 4 years. Sarah, I need you to return the money you took from our accounts. Her mask finally dropped. I told you, Marcus. I moved it for safety. You're not thinking clearly because of the medications. Show me the account statements. I don't have to show you anything. Maybe you should focus on your recovery instead of obsessing over money. That's when I knew there was no going back. The next morning, Detective Santos arrived at my house with a search warrant. Sarah had spent the night at Derek's apartment, a fact we knew thanks to the GPS tracking that was still active on her phone. Mr. Chen, we've reviewed the evidence your attorney provided, Detective Santos said. The timing and amount of these withdrawals, combined with your medical records, gives us probable cause for a search. Emma and I watched from the kitchen as Detective Santos and her team went through Sarah's belongings. They found her laptop, several burner phones, and a folder of printed financial documents that she'd apparently been collecting for months. But the real bombshell came when they searched her car. Mr. Chen, could you come out here, please? Detective Santos called from the driveway. In Sarah's trunk, they'd found a box containing printed emails, bank statements, and handwritten notes. As I looked through them, My blood ran cold. The emails were between Sarah and Derek, going back 8 months. They detailed not just their affair, but their entire plan to clean out the tech guy, meaning me. In one email, Derek had written, "The yoga instructor thing is perfect cover. He thinks you're just bad with money, but you're actually building our exit fund." Sarah's response, "He's so predictable. Every time I ask for help with rent, he just transfers money without asking questions. I've been pocketing half of it." But the worst part was a handwritten note in Sarah's handwriting. "Medical emergency equals opportunity. If something happens to him, I have power of attorney. If nothing happens, I'll create a crisis and take what I need while he can't stop me." Detective Santos held up another document. "Mr. Chen, did you sign a medical power of attorney giving Sarah authority over your healthcare and finances?" I stared at the paper. It had my signature on it, but I'd never seen the document before in my life. "That's not real," I said. "I never signed that." "The signature looks authentic to our document examiner, but the paper and ink are different from the date listed. It appears to be a forgery created with a signature copied from another document." Emma grabbed my arm. "Marcus, she was planning to kill you." Detective Santos nodded grimly. "Or at minimum declare you incompetent and take control of all your assets. This goes way beyond theft." Sarah and Derek were arrested at his apartment that afternoon. The police found $31,000 in cash hidden in his bedroom closet, money they'd already started spending on plane tickets to Costa Rica and a down payment on beachfront property. They'd been planning to disappear permanently. The arraignment was surreal. Sarah, wearing an orange jumpsuit, looked nothing like the woman who'd played concerned girlfriend in my hospital room. When she saw me in the courtroom gallery, her expression shifted from defiance to something that looked almost like relief. Maybe she was tired of pretending too. Derek, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to crawl under the defendant's table. According to Jennifer, he'd started talking to prosecutors almost immediately, hoping for a plea deal. Apparently, robbing someone recovering from a heart attack wasn't the romantic adventure he'd signed up for. The charges were serious: financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and forgery. The forged power of attorney alone carried a potential 5-year sentence. But the moment that made everything worthwhile came when the prosecutor read Derek's confession in open court. Mr. Garcia states that Ms. Rodriguez initiated the plan to financially exploit Mr. Chen. According to his statement, Ms. Rodriguez said, and I quote, "He's too nice and too trusting. He'll never see it coming, and by the time he figures it out, we'll be gone." I looked over at Sarah. She was staring straight ahead, but I could see tears running down her cheeks. The prosecutor continued. Mr. Garcia further states that Ms. Rodriguez had been forging documents and manipulating Mr. Chen's finances for over a year, with the ultimate goal of either taking control of his assets through fraudulent legal documents or stealing them during a medical emergency. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that she'd acted out of desperation and fear, but the evidence was overwhelming. The premeditation was clear, the deception was documented, and Derek's confession eliminated any chance of claiming it was a spontaneous decision. The judge set bail at $250,000 each, money they obviously didn't have, since they'd been planning to flee with my stolen savings. They were both remanded to custody pending trial. 6 months later, I was standing in the same courthouse for the sentencing hearing. My recovery had been remarkable, both physically and financially. Sarah pled guilty to avoid a lengthy trial. Her lawyer had advised her that with Derek's testimony and the mountain of evidence we'd collected, a conviction was inevitable. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution plus damages. Derek, who'd cooperated with prosecutors, got 2 years and community service. But the real transformation had happened to me. During my recovery, I'd started working remotely for a cybersecurity firm in Seattle. My experience with Sarah had given me unique insights into how people exploit trust and manipulate systems. I'd become something of an expert in financial fraud prevention. Emma had helped me buy out Sarah's interest in our shared lease agreements and utilities. The house was fully mine now, and I'd spent the recovery months making it feel like home again instead of a crime scene. I'd also started dating someone new. Lisa Martinez, my former manager who'd helped save my life during the heart attack, had visited me regularly during recovery. What started as friendship had slowly become something deeper. She was the opposite of Sarah in every way, transparent, honest, and genuinely caring. "You know what's funny?" I told Emma over dinner at my favorite Austin restaurant. "Sarah thought she was destroying my life, but she actually saved it." Emma raised her glass. "How do you figure?" "I was sleepwalking through a relationship with someone who saw me as a paycheck. I was working too hard, stressing too much, and ignoring all the warning signs. In my relationship and my health, I clinked my glass against hers. The heart attack forced me to slow down. Sarah's betrayal forced me to start over. And starting over led me to everything I actually wanted." 3 weeks later, I got a letter from Sarah in prison. She wanted to apologize and explain her actions. I didn't read past the first paragraph. Some chapters of your life are better left closed. Instead, I folded the letter and put it in my filing cabinet next to all the evidence that had sent her to prison. Evidence, documentation, preparation. The skills that had saved me once were now helping me build something better. A year after the heart attack, I was sitting in my backyard with Lisa Martinez, watching the sunset over Austin. My cardiologist had just given me a clean bill of health, and my new job in cybersecurity was more fulfilling than anything I'd done in software engineering. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been documenting everything?" Lisa asked. I thought about it. Honestly, Sarah would have gotten away with it completely. I would have woken up from the hospital broke, betrayed, and with no way to prove what she'd done. What made you start keeping records in the first place? Instinct, I guess. Something felt wrong, and I've learned to trust that feeling. I took her hand. Plus, I'm a systems guy. When something doesn't add up, I investigate. The local news had picked up our story a few months earlier. The reporter had called it the tech guy's revenge, but that never felt right to me. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. More importantly, it was about the lesson I'd learned. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never let someone else have complete control over your financial security. I'd started speaking at financial literacy workshops, sharing my story with people who might be in similar situations. The response was always the same. People recognizing warning signs in their own relationships, asking how to protect themselves without seeming paranoid or controlling. The key, I always told them, is that protecting yourself doesn't mean you don't trust your partner. It means you're being responsible for your own security. Anyone who gets angry at reasonable financial boundaries is showing you who they really are. Lisa squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you for turning something so awful into something that helps people. I looked at the house Sarah and I had shared, now filled with laughter and honest conversations. She thought she was taking everything from me. Instead, she gave me a second chance at everything. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. You just have to be smart enough to see the difference.